Good morning everybody. Been asked to do the talk this morning, and I've chosen the subject of the provision of God, how God provides, taken from an idea from Spurgeon and his morning and evening book. And I want to start with a reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 41, and beginning at verse 55. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Then Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, do." The famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. And the famine became severe in the land of Egypt. So all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all lands. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die." So we can see there that God saw that need for Jacob. And when I originally thought about it, I thought God had seen that need 7 years before. And of course, we see that in Genesis chapter 41 and verse 25. And I'm assuming for the sake of time that you're basically familiar with the story of Joseph. And Pharaoh's had these dreams, and Joseph interprets them to him. Verse 25, then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. The dreams are one. And the 7 thin and ugly cows, which came up after them, are 7 years. And the 7 empty heads blighted by the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. So Joseph gives Pharaoh 7 years warning, but of course the truth is God didn't just think about that 7 years before and thought, in 7 years' time we'll have a famine in Egypt because I want to do this, that and the other. God had decided this in his own mysterious, all-knowing way in eternity past. So there's the first lesson that I wanted to bring out, that God knew Jacob and his family would have this need in eternity past. And interestingly as well, the thought occurred to me that God saw not only Jacob and his family's physical needs, but he also saw their spiritual and emotional needs. And he chose to deal with some of those strongest needs at this particular time. Let me give you an example. Jacob himself, he had a crushing sense of loss about Joseph. And we see this in Genesis 37 and beginning at verse 32. Genesis 37 and beginning at verse 32. Then they, that is Joseph's brothers, sent the tunic of many colours, and they brought it to their father. They dipped it in blood, of course, at this point, and said, "We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?" And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, But he refused to be comforted, and he said, "For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning." Thus his father wept for him. So Jacob is devastated by this apparent loss, and he hadn't gotten over it for all those years. Jacob's brothers, they had a crushing sense of guilt concerning Joseph. And we see this in Genesis 42 and beginning at verse 17. So he, that is Joseph, put them, that is his brothers, all together in prison 3 days. And again, I'm assuming you know the story. Then Joseph said to them the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house. But you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your word will be verified, and you shall not die." And they did so. Then they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother. For we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, saying, "Did I not speak to you, saying, 'Do not sin against the boy,' and you would not listen? Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us." So after all those years, they'd never gotten over that guilt of what they'd done to Joseph. And so years on now, Jacob and his family, his sons in particular, are in this situation where they've got this sense of guilt, this sense of loss. They're literally starving, and God has provided for all of their needs in this very, very special way by elevating Joseph to become the Prime Minister of Egypt, and God is going to meet all of their needs at this one particular point in time. It's quite astonishing, and it's just a very simple lesson for us. God is committed to meeting our needs. Think about how God met your need in salvation. I didn't see my need of salvation for 21 years, but God saw my need for salvation. I see it now, but I certainly didn't see it then. And God provided for that need in an extraordinary way. Of course, his son, Jesus Christ, had to go to the cross and give his own life to provide the needs and the means necessary for that salvation. But of course, God isn't just committed to providing our spiritual needs. He's committed to providing all of our needs. And it's just a very simple point that in the times in which we live, in which so many people are so concerned and so worried about this virus, and I think it's about time we now started to get worried about the financial implications of this lockdown, because they're going to be hideous, I believe. We can look to God, and we can be confident that even though it may be very hard to see, and it may be in an extraordinary way that we could not possibly imagine, God will provide for our needs. Thank you.